I'm Chucky, and I'm your friend to the end. I hate kids.
Where are we going?
Home.
Where's home?
I have no idea.
Heidi fucking ho. Ah, ah, ah.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. This is episode 4, part 1 of Chucky Talks. Thank you for joining us. Hi, Christine.
Hello, Alex. I'm happy to be here, or lucky to be here, I guess.
Home after a rather wild weekend in Atlantic City.
Yeah.
Atlantic City was certainly a good time. You had quite the room this weekend, and we kind of manifested a room party that you didn't expect to have, but it was a lot of fun, wasn't it?
It was fun. It went on until 2:00 in the morning, but it became only a few people I really know, and know well were there. And we played this game where everyone writes down some sort of philosophical questions and put them in a bowl, and you're going to draw a question. If you get the question, you got to answer it. And anybody else who wants to answer it can answer it. So we played that till about 2:00 in the morning. And one of the participants was a 13-year-old boy. So there were two 13-year-olds there for most of the night. So it was sort of a family-friendly, awesome little gathering, which is how I like to do it.
Oh, man, I'm sorry that I missed that part. I was so drained and dead tired that I left before that. But that sounds like the most fun part of the night, and I missed that.
I do that at my house on a regular basis, sort of an opening thing that happens when you come to my house for dinner party is everyone gets usually just one a card, like a thank you card, and you write your question in it, and they go into a bowl and everyone draws. And so it's the way to keep a dinner party of say 8 or 10 people at a table, not dividing into sections. It's a way to keep the whole tables focused on everybody, and you get to know people pretty well because you're asking these questions that have deep answers.
Yeah, that's great. You were centering, like in Larry David. You were in the center of the table, dishing out.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, that's great. Well, yeah, it was super fun. We are back home now and back on a mission to get this podcast out to you tonight, which we shall. We had other plans for this fourth week of our podcast, fourth episode, I should say, but we decided to jump ahead to something that I'm sure you guys have been excited for. We've been excited for, and the time feels right. Today, we're going to show you the first part of our interview with Chucky himself, Brad Dourif.
We recorded a wraparound, our opening and closing little bits. We did it in Atlantic City together, and on my computer though. And then I left my computer charging cord in Atlantic City, so I had no way to access what we shot. Thank God I'd sent you the interviews. But yeah, so we've been lots of hurdles that we weren't anticipating. You can't buy a charger for a new computer at Apple, by the way, to the world.
It's super interesting that maybe that Showboat Hotel in Atlantic City is a bit of a black hole, because I left my cell phone there last time and couldn't retrieve that either. So here we are.
It's got a technology-hating ghost in that place.
There is. But anyways, we don't want to keep you here, because without further ado, we have a very, very interesting and fun interview. It was an honor for us to chat with Brad. Something I've wanted to do for a very long time, and it's one of the beauties of this podcast. Gives us an opportunity to speak with our friends about things that maybe this is only the platform where it's appropriate. So it was really just truthfully a thrill to talk to him, and we hope you really enjoy this interview.
And it's the first half. We divide it into two because we wanted to give Brad as much time as possible. So welcome to it.
deservedly so. Thank you so much. Enjoy.
All right, here we are. Brad, thank you
Howdy.
so very much for joining us.
My
Welcome to
pleasure.
it.
This is a podcast called Chucky Talks. If there's anyone in the world that we'd love to talk to, Chucky Talks. So
Yeah, I guess I'm Chucky.
I guess you must have figured that out by now. I mean, this is 33 years, 32 years since the beginning of this.
Wow.
You are, the antithesis to my character that has been in my life since my earliest memories of my life.
Poor man.
Right? I'm so thankful for it and so blessed and so, upon reflecting and even just realizing it my whole life, I'm just so thankful that you were the character for this, because
Thank you.
what you've brought to this character is without question the largest factor, one of the largest, you and Don, for the success of this, for this to have worked as well as it has. It is what you brought to this character. And we're so thankful that you took the time to sit down with us. I know the fans are going to love it, and it means so much to us. So we have so much we want to ask you, obviously.
Start up.
Yes,
So let's do it. You grew up in West Virginia, and you had a family of artists, and you wanted to be an artist from the very get-go.
I'm assuming you mean by artist, you mean painter. I had two older sisters, both who were painters, and my first love was painting. But then that was in boarding school. I was never a good student, and boarding school was very hard for me. So I would escape by painting. It's a good way to get lost in another world. And so I did that. I was never really, really good as a painter, but I was good enough to so it was fun for me.
Yeah.
Then I saw my mom in a rehearsal of Anastasia, and she was doing a speech about butterflies, and suddenly I could see the butterflies. And I've said this, this is old news, but I mean, I was like, how did she do that? And that's what really started me. I perceived acting as something that was kind of magical, and I really wanted to be a part of it from that moment on.
Well, so all right. So West Virginia is, not famous for being a hotbed of,
Art.
acting opportunity. So where'd you go from there? Like, you decided you wanted to do it?
Well, I started out at Circle Rep, which was a not Circle Rep. I'm sorry. I started out at Greenbrier Repertory Theater Company, which was in a tent in near Lewisburg, West Virginia, and right on the Greenbrier River. And I did summer stock there for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Basically as somebody who helped build sets and took small parts, and I just watched the main players rehearse and act and was and had a wonderful 3 summers doing that. So anyway, that's where I really started really applying myself to theater.
And then
Yeah.
did you move to Manhattan at some point? Or
Yeah, when I was 19, I moved to Manhattan. A woman who recently died quite sadly, and has been a friend from that moment on, Conchata Farrell, saw me in a political review and said, "What are you doing in Huntington, West Virginia?" And I said, "Well, I'm wasting my time." She said, "Come to New York. I'm a part of a theater company, and I think if you could be a part of it, it would be really good for you." And it turned out to be Circle Repertory Theater Company, and I did there. I did played a play called When You Coming Back, Red Rider, and Milos Forman saw me in it and cast me as Billy Bibbit.
To talk about working with the best. So many actors in that were just so, oh shit. I didn't turn my phone off.
Well,
Say that
it was
again.
a first job for a lot of them, you know. I wanted to ask you, because Nicholson is, like, since I was a child, one of my idols. And he'd already done so many of the iconic things, Easy Rider and Five Easy Pieces and Carnal Knowledge and The Last Detail, which is one of my all-time favorites. And I mean, so much incredible work already. I wonder if you were intimidated working with him.
You know what's weird about that is that I saw Last Detail,
Which is awesome.
and under which I think that's his best performance.
Yeah.
Myself. I think it was groundbreaking, and I think it changed the way people acted. I think people suddenly got this improvisational style of his, and it began to permeate the scene. Intimidated, I suppose I was a little bit, but he's a show unto himself, whether he's on camera or not, and I think he relaxed all of us.
Last Detail, I have the poster in my house. I'm just a huge fan of that, and Five Easy Pieces too. But
I forgot to tell a part of the story. I said to myself when I saw Five Easy Pieces, I said, I'm going to work with him. That's going to happen. I just somehow really felt like I knew I was going to work with him, and it, coincidentally turned out the next year I did.
Wow.
That's early manifestation power.
Universe,
Yeah.
Well, whatever it was, I was happy.
Yeah, well, you should be. You should have been. Because I think I don't know if you get this. Well, for you it would be different. For me, people assume that my resume consists of things that are my taste. They think that every show I've done, I did it because I loved the show and not just because I got the audition and got the job, and that's why I did that. Like my resume would look much more like yours if I got to pick what was on it. I would be Philip Seymour Hoffman. I wouldn't be myself. And I wonder if you marvel at your own resume, because you've worked with, the directors alone that you've gotten to work with are, John Huston, you've been around long enough to work with people that are long gone. And Michael Cimino and David Lynch and Milos Forman and Werner Herzog and Alan Parker, Spike Lee, Peter Jackson, and Jean-Pierre Jeunet of Amelie fame, which I'm a big fan of. It's a historic resume. I wonder if you ever have to pinch yourself.
No.
Yeah,
no point in that.
Yeah, it's
It'll
just
be
like
the same no matter what I do.
Yeah, well,
yeah, I have been lucky to work with really good directors, and I've learned a lot from them. So I think every director that's a great director has something unique about them, something that makes what they do, a way of going about things that makes what they do different from everybody else. With Milos Forman, has a great eye, had a great eye. But he never ever left a shot until he was happy. And he's the only director I've ever worked with that was like that.
You worked with him twice, right?
Oh yeah, twice. Cuckoo's Nest and Ragtime.
Yeah. I recently watched Heaven's Gate, which is an endeavor in itself, just watching it. And it's a notorious film. And your part in it was disappointingly small for me. I wonder how long you were there on that location shooting.
The whole time.
For a year.
Yeah.
You were there for a fucking year. That's amazing. And how would you characterize that experience?
Well, to be honest, it was, sex and drugs and rock and roll. I spent a lot of time not acting. I got quite good at roller skating, as did everybody. I wished I had more to do, but there was always plenty. There was always interludes there where I was acting.
Yeah.
And I was, by the time we got around to it, I was overly prepared.
Right. And so you speak German in the film, right?
No, I spoke Polish.
To my untrained ear, it sounds like German. So, and did you become comfortable speaking Polish?
No,
Or just
I couldn't speak
phonetically?
Polish. Polish is a very, very non-Germanic Germanic language. And no, I don't speak it. I had to, when I spoke it, I had to learn it sort of syllable by syllable. I knew what the words meant and I knew what I was saying, but I certainly wasn't the same thing as learning Polish.
Right.
And I spent a long time on that.
Yeah, I
I
imagine.
mean, I would roller skate and say lines, until they really, really were second nature to me.
And how did you feel about the film? What is your opinion of the film?
I thought it was better than what people said it was, but I thought it was too long and unsavable, really. I mean, there was no way that you could make that movie by editing it, it was better to just let it be what it was. A lot about it is a photographic masterpiece. I mean, some stuff in there is really beautiful, memorable still to me. But no, the film didn't work.
It's a shame because the parts of it that do work are really great. And it does go on for, it's 3 hours and 39 minutes, Alex. It's a lot.
Vincent Canby's review was, it was being like given a 4-hour tour of your own living room.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a Western, so it's kind of a bare bones thing. And then, do you have a favorite performance of your own?
Not really. I mean, it changes from time to time. I mean, basically, it's really about the experience I had when I did it. There are things I like about a lot of performances, but there's nothing really about any one of them that makes me think that was the best thing I did. Probably the best thing I did was Billy Bibbit, but it's the most famous thing I did.
Right.
How was your experience on Wise Blood? What was is a longtime favorite of mine too. So I wonder what your experience on Wise Blood was like.
It was difficult, but I didn't always see eye to eye to John Huston, but he was certainly in his head. He cut a film and saw it better and clearer than anybody I ever worked with. There wasn't much mystery about what was going to be in the movie because he only did a few shots.
Right.
And it all worked, so his understanding of what to shoot and what was going on in a scene and whether a scene worked or not was better than anybody I ever worked with. That doesn't mean he's the best director I ever worked with, but on that level, he was certainly the best.
Who would you say is the best director you've ever worked with, since you opened that up? I
wouldn't say, it's kind of, you can't really say, because at a certain level, everybody does something that's unique and extraordinary. I mean, I don't know. How can you compare any two? I loved working with David Lynch.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go, because he's a favorite of mine.
Yeah, I loved. I loved working with a lot of people. I did a movie with how can I not remember his name? The German director.
Werner Herzog?
Werner Herzog. I did a movie with Werner. We shot it in one day.
Oh, wow.
And that was an experience. I shot a whole feature film with him in one day. Now, there was a lot of footage of people floating around in space and underwater, basically the thrust of the film was just me and Werner, me talking to the camera about being an alien, you know.
And you worked with Spike Lee too, didn't you?
Yes,
How
in
was
two
that?
movies, in one movie. I love him. I think he's wonderful. And I think Doing the Right Thing was a great film. Was a great movie.
Yeah.
It was. You worked with Alan Parker. Alan Parker is amazing because his resume is sort of like Rob Reiner. Rob Reiner's got this really like if you look at his first 7 or 8 films, they're all unbelievably great and wildly different. And Alan Parker has a similar resume where one film to the next is changed so dramatically. I wonder what your experience working with him was like, Alan Parker.
I thought he worked very well with actors. He was a bit rough on the crew. I thought that Mississippi Burning was a beautiful film to look at. I mean, you know, the burning churches and all of that had this cinematic rawness and beauty to them, you know. I mean, even though it was tragic to look at a church burning, it's also beautiful. The way he photographed it. It was poetic almost. So I was quite enamored of him.
Were you a fan of his resume before?
Yes, absolutely. Of course. How could I not be?
Yeah.
And since.
Yeah. So I've heard you tell a story, and I don't know if it was on a panel or somewhere else. I may have seen you tell a story about The Exorcist 3. Did you tell it? And it was fascinating to me, that story. I wonder if you would recount it for us.
Certainly regarding your voice. I just watched that scene again recently. I know that's a fan favorite performance of yours.
For good reason.
For incredibly good reason. I was watching that scene and I don't remember the story that you told about it, and I didn't know the inside information, but when I heard this demonic voice coming from you, I said, that didn't sound like you. I mean, it didn't sound like your voice. And then it began to sound like your voice. And I think the truth to that lies in your story.
Well, first of all, you know, they mechanically altered my voice at times and times less so. So in order to make it, you know, make the point that the guy was talking, that the character that was talking through the priest was actually a killer. It was a spirit. The thing with that is I shot the movie. The director was very happy. He called me up and told me he was editing. When he was editing, he said, you know, you're really good. I'm really, really happy with this. And then I had to go to this lunch meeting, and they basically told me that they were cutting me out of the movie, and they were going to bring in Jason Miller. So what they did was they had him come, but he unfortunately couldn't do it. He couldn't, even though he's, you know, he's I think a far more talented actor than I am, but he just couldn't do it. And so they brought me back in, and I had to go in and reshoot everything because this, you know, the set was different and everything. So, and I had 24 hours to get ready for that. And I guess I'm making this story very uninteresting, but that's the gist of it. I lost the part. I was cut out, and then they brought me back in.
And so I think, am I wrong that almost happened to you again with Chucky, that Mississippi, you were doing Mississippi Burning when Chucky was,
and Tom Holland wanted me to be there right there and then. So they got another guy to do it. And apparently Tom Holland thought he was funnier than hell. And they did this thing, and they screened it, and the audience hated it.
Yeah.
And the reason why it was hated was very, very simple. He wasn't dangerous. It was a horror film, and a horror film has to have a monster or it doesn't work. and the monster is Chucky, and he has to be someone who you get the feeling that this little doll is going to turn a living human being into a piece of meat. So they brought me back, and I tried my hardest to give him that.
And we're forever grateful that you did. And am I wrong that I think the funniest moment in the film is an ad lib by you? Is the fuck you in the elevator?
Yeah.
That was an ad lib, really? I
Yeah.
I didn't know that all these years. That I remember seeing it in the theater, and that always got such a pop from the audience. And I often say that different things inspired Chucky to move to a more comical part when he did. But I think the last,
I think he was always
he
comical.
always was.
I
But
mean, he
that
was
laugh
really
got it.
he had a sense of humor. He had fun killing people, and
Absolutely.
it was something that he enjoyed. And so wisecracks were, a part of him from the beginning. It was just very important when you're doing this killer doll that he remained very dangerous, and that was the focus for the first film. It had to be a story about a killer doll.
And it worked out so great that the way the script was, that Charles Lee Ray makes the first appearance, and that you got to kind of dive into this guy on screen from the audience's perspective before meeting the doll. Because even the scene, as brief as it is in the beginning, is just so intense, and so you feel this character's passion for what he does and where he is at that moment in his life. It seems like everything's fallen to shit. Things have retconned to where we learned, ultimately in this series, who tipped him off, Detective Norris, that led to that evening. But it was just such an intense scene to start the film, and that segue into Andy's first appearance, the juxtaposition of this horrible killer and the innocence of Andy is just so obvious right from the start, and impactful.
I think most people don't know how you met Dawn.
I was going to say that.
Yeah.
So,
Don was, I was teaching at Columbia University. I was teaching directing actors, a course that, taught you how to work with actors, supposedly. And Don was somebody from NYU who came in and audited my class.
do you have
And that's how I met him.
Do you have a memory of him in your class?
No.
No. Yeah.
Not barely, a little bit. I kind of think back, but it's so vague. I wonder if I'm just, but I think maybe I probably do remember him.
But speaking of actors, like you've worked with in the 70s, and so many great actors and so many great directors from the 70s. That's such an iconic era of film. And I have Jack Nance and Harry Dean Stanton and William Hickey and Gene Hackman, just fucking iconic, awesome people. And I wonder if there's anyone that you wish you'd gotten to work with, but they're gone before you got a chance to.
There are tons of them.
Well, let's have some.
Great. I really would like to have worked with Al Pacino. I would love to have worked with Laurence Olivier, the great English actors. I mean, whoever's, I didn't work with is who I want to work with.
Right. But I wonder if there's jobs that you were offered and said no to for reasons that maybe you changed your mind later, or that you couldn't do them because you were otherwise employed, and so opportunities that you missed that you wish you hadn't.
I sort of take things as they come. I don't, if there's a conflict of interest, I forget about it. I mean, there are tons of things I auditioned for that I didn't get that I wish I had done, but I don't regret them long, because there's no point in it. It'll drive yourself crazy that way.
Right.
I mean, the vast majority of things I wanted to do, I didn't get to do. So, so I don't, I mean, I just, over the years, I've kind of trained myself to forget about it. And, you know, I always wanted to play St. Francis of Assisi when I was young. I felt like I really had a way of looking at him that would have made him, you know, a more interesting character. But that never happened.
Well, I noticed that your resume has enormous amount of television on it, which I don't think most people would necessarily think of you as being a television guy. And your Deadwood is like in the top 10 TV shows of all time. It's such a great show. I wonder, are you a fan of television? Do you watch a lot of television?
I have been. I'm not a fan at the moment. I mean, I think television's probably the number one medium over film now. It has the best writers, and it has a much bigger audience, and that's the way people you know, watch film now.
Yeah,
but no, I'm not really into. I mean, I have my little guilty pleasures, but I don't watch anywhere near as much as most people do.
there's so much. When I started acting in the 80s, the edgy content was in film, and now the edgy content is entirely on television. And people, but somebody, I read a review of again of Heaven's Gate, and they remarked upon the length, the running time of it isn't a problem for people anymore, because people are so used to sitting down and binging and watching an 8-hour story. Is they can sit, they have much more patience for storytelling now than they may have in the past. It may have to do also with the fact that they're home and they have the comforts of home, and they're not in a theater sitting still for 8 hours.
Definitely.
But because you've got so much TV on your resume, I wonder if you have any like all-time favorite shows. Alex and I certainly do. I wonder if you have any shows that you would say are in like.
I thought Hill Street Blues was something I remember really. I couldn't wait for the next week, you know. And on the day I was counting the hours, and X-Files. I thought that was first year I was really enamored of that whole thing.
Yeah.
And I got to be in it, which was very cool. I didn't even wasn't expecting that one. I wish they'd given me something easier, but.
And you were in the HBO family, and that HBO family, I really think so many fantastic actors found their best work through those series on HBO. How did you like the HBO experience working with them?
Well, the smart thing that HBO did is they picked a story they liked. They picked this showrunner they liked, and then they left them alone.
Yeah.
And so everything that was there to serve the vision of what they were doing. They knew that if they spent the money, they could get it back. Yeah. And what they needed was more prescriptions. And if they had the best show, something to really pull somebody in, then it was money well spent. And, they were expanding, they were trying to become, a network where you had to buy them. And that's what they did. I mean, they really came very close to achieving that, I think. So yeah, it was, and it changed television.
It did.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you guys so very much. That was part 1 of our interview with Brad. The second part will be coming soon. We have some other things that are exciting along the way, though.
We are going to reinvent. We are going to reinvent our episode breakdown a little bit. And so the new format will be the next time, right?
Yeah. We've done things the first 3 weeks a certain way, and I think it's our show, and if we want to evolve it any way we want, this would be a good opportunity to. Episode 3 was a big shift in tone. Episode 4 is a bit different from that one. So I think it was a good time to try things a little bit differently, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
But thank you guys for tuning in tonight, and thank you for sticking around. And we will tune in. Oh, say that again. Thank you guys for tuning in tonight. Thank you for sticking around. We've got some fun stuff coming up. Promise. Episode 4, part 2 will be next Tuesday.
So see you next Tuesday.
See you next Tuesday.